A car is one of the most expensive things many of us own. Keeping them on the road isn't cheap, and motor accidents can be costly. If you happen to have a high-end vehicle, then you really need to factor in protecting it, because a prang in one of these is going to be much more expensive than in a family saloon. That's where our car insurance policies have us covered. But as any fraud department will tell you, not all accidents are what they first appear, especially when dealing with the all-too-familiar scenario of wildly conflicting accounts. Direct Line recently dealt with such a case, only this one had a bit of a twist.
This claim was presented to us as a straightforward road traffic accident, albeit with two unusual vehicles. Our customer was driving a van, and the vehicle he'd collided with was actually a Ferrari.
A high-performance car like a Ferrari is quite possibly the last thing you'll want to be driving into. The model in question can cost almost £250,000, so this was not going to be a small claim.
The collision resulted in minimal damage to the Ferrari. It needed a new bumper, some fixing of the lights, badge, etc. The collision resulted in £23,000 for the vehicle repairs and in excess of £50,000 for a hire vehicle whilst the Ferrari was off the road. As you can see, this was a significant claim for both the vehicle damage and the hire charges.
So almost £75,000. But as with many accidents on the road, the drivers in question had differing accounts of what had caused the collision.
The circumstances were described to us as the Ferrari had had to slow in busy traffic, and our customer had been unable to stop in his van and had collided with the back of the Ferrari.
Sounds plausible enough, but not according to the driver of the van.
We contacted our customer for his version of events, and he told us a totally different story. He said he had been cut up by the Ferrari on the dual carriageway, and the Ferrari had then pulled right in front of him in an aggressive manner, gesturing out of his window and slamming on his brakes repeatedly.
This is poles apart from the Ferrari driver's story.
Fortunately, our driver was able to avoid a collision on a couple of occasions, but the third time the Ferrari driver came to a dead stop and our driver was unable to stop before he collided with the rear. The Ferrari driver got out of his car and remonstrated with the van driver. Our customer said that the Ferrari driver was acting very aggressively. He was gesturing to him out of a window, and even after the accident he continued to rant and rave and swear at him. Our customer suggested that they use a lay-by further down the road to exchange details. As they exchanged details in the lay-by, our customer said the Ferrari driver was still very aggressive towards him and still swearing repeatedly at him. At this stage, we have no way of determining who's telling the truth here.
Historically, a case like this would have been almost impossible to get to the bottom of. But over the last few years, more and more motorists have been installing dash cams in their vehicles, and it's estimated that more than a quarter of the UK's drivers now have them. Fortunately for Direct Line, their customer had one fitted to his van, and to say it painted the Ferrari driver in a bad light would be an understatement.
The footage clearly shows the Ferrari driver pulling in front of the van and then slowing down dramatically. It's quite dangerous the way he's slowing down here.
Ferrari man isn't content to do this just once, and his grasp of the highway code is questionable, to say the least.
Then he does it again. At this point, you can see the Ferrari driver has got his arm out of the window, so he's actually only driving with one hand here, at the same time being very keen to gesture to our van driver as to exactly what's going on.
He's a real charmer, isn't he?
He slowed down once again in a very dangerous fashion, causing the van to get very close to the back of the Ferrari. And at this point, he actually slams on the brakes, causing the van to drive into the back of the Ferrari.
This footage from the point of view of the van driver shows the Ferrari driver was not struggling to slow down in traffic, as he claimed, and instead was stopping of his own accord. And when the collision that he appeared to be trying to induce finally happened, he ramped it up yet another gear. The Ferrari driver is so angry that he walks out into the path of the oncoming traffic and is very lucky not to get hit by a passing lorry.
You can see how angry he is when he gets out of the car, shouting and swearing, remonstrating with our driver as if it's his fault, when clearly the Ferrari driver has caused this accident in the first place.
But that's as far as his luck went, because despite his efforts to pin the blame for the accident on the van driver, as far as Direct Line was concerned, the evidence from the dash cam was crystal clear.
This wasn't an accident caused by our customer. The Ferrari driver wasn't slowing down as a result of slow-moving traffic, but he was deliberately brake testing, standing on his brakes, gesturing out of the window, and inducing an accident that our client was totally unresponsible for.
Based on the extremely revealing evidence, Direct Line refused to pay out.
The dashcam footage didn't lie. It couldn't be argued with, and it meant that we could decline the claim in full. We didn't make any payments for the damage to the Ferrari, which came to £23,000, and we also weren't going to make any payment for the hire charges, which were in excess of £50,000.
This case highlights the importance of honesty when it comes to making an insurance claim. For Ferrari Man, the dashcam footage was damning.
It's really important when you put a claim in that you give a true version of events, especially as you don't actually know who's filming and who's watching. Both insurers and the police are using dashcam footage more and more as evidence of bad and dangerous driving.